New this morning, Border Patrol agents found a man-made tunnel connecting Juarez in Mexico to El Paso, Texas.
The sudden lockdown of the Texas border by U.S. federal agents shocked the entire country. But this wasn't about another migrant surge. And it wasn't some political stunt either, at least not on the surface.
Welcome back. We want to take you to breaking news now because as people in Texas are still reeling from the horrible flooding, a separate incident is unfolding just along the border. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol announced earlier today.
What really sparked this drastic move? A bone-chilling discovery buried deep beneath the dry, cracked earth near a quiet, overlooked stretch of the Rio Grande. Border Patrol agents were just doing a standard sweep in an area long known for shady smuggling activity. But what they stumbled across wasn't your average busted tunnel. It looked like a collapsed passage at first, but what they actually found sent Homeland Security into full-blown panic mode. This wasn't some rough dirt tunnel hacked out with shovels. It was a full-blown underground complex. We're talking miles-long tunnels, reinforced with pro-grade materials, complete with ventilation, electric wiring, and a layout so advanced it looked straight out of a military blueprint. But this wasn't just about sneaking people or cargo, it was something way bigger. Hidden deep inside the maze were surveillance cameras, locked-off chambers, and clear signs someone had been living and operating down there for a long time. Authorities wasted no time sealing the whole place off. The FBI, DHS, and even the Army Corps of Engineers were pulled in to analyze this thing. And what they found turned the heat up even more. Some of the hidden rooms were stacked with high-end computer systems, satellite gear, and encrypted tech setups. Other parts held maps, mysterious symbols, and operation plans that pointed to years of strategy. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. It was organized, high-tech, and way too intentional to ignore. What made things even scarier? Early investigations suggested this underground fortress had been hiding in plain sight for over 10 years. That's a whole decade of silence. While everyone focused on what was happening above ground, this thing was operating right beneath our feet. The decision to shut down the Texas border completely wasn't taken lightly. But once intel dropped that this wasn't just about drugs or smuggling people, it was game over.
Federal investigators say criminal organizations are using new ways to sneak people into the U.S. from Mexico. Instead of climbing the border wall or looking for weak spots along the border, more people are using storm drains to sneak into El Paso.
Inside that tunnel system, agents found gear straight out of a war zone. Military-style weapons, encrypted comms, and signs of tight coordination between folks inside the U.S. and foreign operatives. This wasn't just some crime ring anymore. This was a national security emergency. Agents quickly expanded the lockdown zone, worried there could be more hidden entrances scattered across the area. Military squads rolled in, drones flooded the skies, and surveillance kicked into overdrive. Everything around the discovery site got locked down tight. Still, the feds weren't saying much to the public at first. Within hours, word spread fast, and chaos followed. Major highways near Texas border crossings got clogged as commercial traffic came to a dead stop. Locals in towns like Eagle Pass and Del Rio said they saw tanks rolling down streets and choppers flying overhead. People were rattled. This wasn't just another border incident. It felt different, heavier. Whispers started flying. Some folks were saying terrorism was involved. Others claimed the feds might have found nuclear materials. Nothing official. But the tension was real, and the secrecy only made the theories spread faster. Then came the bombshell. Experts reviewing the tunnel build said this wasn't your average cartel job. The engineering was too advanced, too surgical. Whatever was going on underground, it was on a whole different level. What really shook investigators, the insane level of engineering inside that tunnel system. We're talking noise-canceling setups, reinforced soil structures, and high-tech construction that pointed to something way bigger than cartel money. This wasn't local. Experts were starting to whisper what nobody wanted to say out loud: outside help. Possibly even from a foreign government. Now the question became, who had the skills, the funding, and the nerve to build this monster underneath U.S. soil, right under the government's nose, for years? With suspicions rising fast, intel agencies began tearing through old satellite footage, hoping to catch when the digging started. They also chased down supply chains, trying to trace where those top-tier materials came from. Then came a bone-chilling find. At one of the internal checkpoints, agents discovered biometric logs. Yep, the tunnel was using facial recognition to track who moved through it. That lit up two massive red flags: who exactly was going in and out, and what kind of data were they collecting down there? The deeper they went, the scarier it got. Cybersecurity teams cracked open hard drives and servers hidden in the chambers, and the files inside? Wild. There were coded messages about infiltration missions, asset drops, and secret coordination zones, all stamped with dates going back over a decade. This wasn't some messy operation. It was clean, precise, and planned for years. Back in DC, things got real. National security advisors held emergency briefings, and the president himself was pulled into a classified sit-down. A temporary state of emergency was declared across the affected region. Homeland Security raised the threat level and started calling international allies, asking quietly, "Have you seen anything like this?" The big fear now? If this tunnel was hiding under Texas, how many more could be buried under Arizona, New Mexico, or California? And worse, had agents, spies, or operatives already slipped in undetected? As all this unraveled, the ripple effect hit fast. The economy stuttered, border towns got tense, and people everywhere were left wondering, how the hell did this even happen? Everything came to a grinding halt. Trade routes got chopped off overnight, throwing supply chains into chaos. Thousands of workers, people who crossed the border daily for jobs, were suddenly stuck, unable to move. Shops and businesses on both sides were forced to shut their doors, and a creeping sense of fear started to spread like wildfire. In South Texas, farmers were already struggling with droughts and a lack of workers. Now they couldn't even move their crops. Trucks lined up for miles with no answers in sight. Some drivers waited for days, unsure if they'd ever get clearance. And in the border towns, the tension exploded. Shelves were being wiped clean, panic buying took over, and whole communities started freezing up economically. Washington felt the pressure. Lawmakers demanded answers fast. Emergency congressional hearings were thrown together, and top brass from intelligence and defense were dragged in to explain how this could have happened. The finger-pointing began. Some blamed the current administration, while others said this was a failure years in the making. But for the public, the politics didn't matter. What shook people was this chilling fact. A secret underground system had been operating beneath their feet for years, and no one saw it coming. And then it got even more human and way more disturbing. Inside those tunnels, agents found traces of life: bedding, canned food, old shoes. There were makeshift kitchens, janky medical stations, all signs that people had lived down there, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds. Were they victims, forced to work under threat by something or someone bigger? Or were they in on it, part of something darker? One hidden chamber sent shivers through the entire investigation. It looked like a place meant for interrogations or detainment. That one room hinted at something way more organized and possibly brutal going on inside the network itself. That eerie chamber, it wasn't some random storage space. It screamed control, enforcement, maybe even punishment. This wasn't just a tunnel for sneaking across the border. It looked like the headquarters of a tight, authoritarian operation with serious structure behind it. The border shutdown and everything they kept uncovering completely flipped the script on how America viewed its border security. Experts started sounding the alarm. It's time to bring in heavy tech. We're talking underground scanning systems, satellite-based geospatial tools, and advanced AI that could sniff out patterns and anomalies deep below the surface. These tools already exist, but they'd mostly been used in overseas military ops. Until now, they were seen as too expensive or too political for domestic use. But now, that old-school thinking looked reckless. Meanwhile, panic started to rise. News outlets dropped bombshells about possible links between the tunnel system and cold cases, human trafficking rings, even whispers of foreign spy operations. Most of it hadn't been confirmed, but it didn't matter. The story was already spiraling into something way bigger. People wanted answers. How deep did this really go? How many people were behind it? How long had it been running? And the biggest fear, what had already slipped through the cracks while no one was looking? As engineers kept mapping the layout, the tunnel system got even creepier. Offshoots started showing up. Side tunnels breaking away in different directions. Some ended out of nowhere, but others stretched deep into U.S. territory. One headed straight toward a power substation, sparking fears of planned sabotage. Another aimed near a regional airport. Each new piece made things scarier. These weren't random paths. They were calculated. The design, the stability, the angles, this whole setup felt like part of a bigger playbook. And worst of all, whatever was coming next might already be in motion. Nobody could agree on what this tunnel network was really for. Was it a launch pad, a getaway route, or something way more sinister? Down in Texas, the vibe flipped fast. Curiosity turned into straight-up paranoia. Locals started blowing up tip lines with reports of weird sounds underground, shadowy figures creeping near back roads, and strange shaking near remote homes. A lot of it ended up being false alarms, but law enforcement wasn't taking anything lightly anymore. Cops even started teaming up with utility crews, digging through old radar scans from past construction projects, trying to see if anything had been missed. The sense of safety Texans once held onto, even with all the border chaos, was now completely shattered. This wasn't just about immigration or crime anymore. It felt like something way more structured had been hiding under everyone's noses. Nationwide, politics started to heat up. Debates over building more border walls suddenly included a new twist. What about what's underneath them? Old funding plans that pushed for drones and aerial surveillance were getting rewritten to include seismic sensors, underground scanners, and deep soil detection tech. The border, always a hot-button issue, entered a brand new, darker chapter. This wasn't just about fences or optics anymore. It was about silent threats, buried deep in places no one ever thought to look. Policy experts and analysts began pushing hard for tighter collaboration with Mexico, not just to chase smugglers, but to launch full-scale joint investigations underground. The idea? If these tunnels stretched beneath both nations, neither side could afford to work alone. The Texas border shutdown had become more than a security reaction. It was a reality check. For decades, America treated the border as a surface-level battle, a line in the dirt. But now, it was crystal clear. The real fight might be happening in the dark, beneath our feet, where cameras can't see, walls don't reach, and standard defenses don't stand a chance. This whole situation shattered long-standing beliefs about safety, surveillance, and control over U.S. soil. While border towns struggled with the everyday chaos of the shutdown, the rest of the country was left asking the same gut-punch question: how could something this massive stay hidden for so long? Even after weeks of digging, scanning, and sealing, officials refused to say the tunnel system had been fully mapped, let alone shut down. The border stayed locked, with only ultra-limited, highly monitored crossings for critical trade and personnel. Crews worked in silence, filling known tunnels with concrete while scanning every inch for more hidden shafts. And the deeper they looked, the more obvious it became. This cleanup would take months, maybe longer, but it wasn't just about sealing holes, it was psychological. America isn't used to feeling outplayed on home turf. In a world where the biggest threats are usually cyber hacks or drone attacks, this old-school underground infiltration hit differently. It wasn't theoretical, it wasn't digital. It was real. A physical breach that ran straight under the nation's feet. This wasn't just some hacker with a laptop or a faraway enemy plotting online. This threat came up from the dirt, quiet, hidden, and way too close. The discovery of this tunnel system, and the massive federal response flipped the whole conversation about national security. It forced people to realize not all threats wear military gear or hide behind screens. Some threats are silent, some are filthy, some are built into the ground. And now, with the Texas border locked tight, the U.S. found itself staring down a new kind of front line. Not one drawn by fences or rivers, but by long, dark, silent passageways buried deep underground. And as federal investigators pushed deeper into this nightmare maze, one thing became crystal clear. Whatever they thought they knew at first, they were only scratching the surface. What started as a suspected local smuggling tunnel quickly turned into something way bigger and way more dangerous. As more data rolled in, signs pointed to a sprawling, multi-level underground network that didn't stop at the Texas border. It stretched across state lines and maybe even beyond. Teams rolled out seismic scanners and magnetic resonance tech across massive chunks of southern Texas and northern Mexico. What they uncovered: insane. Dozens of side tunnels, linked caverns, and bypass routes, some running directly beneath major highways, utility systems, and even government buildings. This wasn't just a tunnel system anymore. It was a full-blown underground ecosystem. This thing was built to function, long-term, in secret. Water pipes had been tapped without detection. Electricity was being quietly stolen from city grids, using transformers disguised inside old, abandoned industrial lots. Cell signals were rerouted underground using custom antennas, allowing encrypted communication that completely dodged surface surveillance. Every move screamed planning. Every detail showed precision. This wasn't some messy, last-minute job. It was cold, it was calculated, and it had been in motion for years. Feds started building psychological profiles, trying to figure out who could mastermind something like this. At first, everyone pointed fingers at the cartels. But that theory started losing steam fast. The level of coordination and tech? It didn't fit the usual playbook. That's when a darker possibility took hold. This wasn't just cartel business. It might have been a hybrid op. Intel now hinted at a secret coalition, one where criminal cartels, extremist groups, and rogue private military contractors joined forces behind the scenes. Each one brought something to the table: smuggling logistics from the cartels, engineering skills from insiders, and tactics from ex-paramilitary operatives. Some experts gave it a name: a shadow coalition. A hidden alliance that had stayed under the radar for years, too organized to be random, too quiet to be coincidence. And buried beneath all the theories and fear, one chilling truth stood tall. This was no accident. It was by design. This wasn't just a tunnel system, it was an entire shadow world that operated completely off the radar. It slipped past drones, made border walls useless, and ignored patrol routes like they didn't even exist. This threat didn't kick down doors or fire shots. It crept, it dug, and it watched. Whole corridors inside were soundproofed with acoustic insulation, making it nearly impossible to detect any movement from above. Vent shafts were hidden in wide-open lands, disguised as simple erosion or natural drainage. The people who built this? They knew exactly how to hide in plain sight. As researchers cataloged everything deep in those tunnels, one room stopped everyone cold. A chamber packed with maps, hundreds of them. Topographic maps, city plans, power grids, even water system layouts of towns all across southern Texas, all of them covered in color-coded notes and bizarre shorthand that took days to crack. But once decrypted, the picture got terrifying. These notes showed someone had done serious surveillance on U.S. infrastructure: military bases, regional airports, tech hubs, water plants. All the critical points that keep civilian life running smooth. These weren't random. These were choke points, targets that, if taken out, could bring entire regions to a halt. But the scariest part? That same chamber held physical models, scaled-down replicas of real U.S. facilities, built by hand and tucked away in dim underground rooms. It looked like whoever was behind this had been rehearsing, running drills, testing moves, getting ready. This wasn't just about smuggling or hiding, it was preparation. Real preparation for something dangerous, something deliberate. These models hinted at plans that went way beyond theory. And if they had all that built and hidden down there, what else could they be ready to hit next? From a national security lens, this changed everything. The old playbook, judging threats by firepower or cash flow, just got tossed out. The enemy now wasn't just armed, they were patient, strategic, and alarmingly familiar with America's soft spots. Linguists were rushed in to decode files and graffiti found deep in the tunnels. What they found? A global mix: Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, and English. Some tags matched known cartel symbols, but others? They looked eerily similar to coded markings used by foreign spy agencies. For years, insiders whispered that foreign powers might be using the US-Mexico border to build proxy assets. This tunnel find? It slammed that theory into terrifying focus. This wasn't cyber war. This wasn't a foreign battlefield. This was a new front line, underneath American soil. As lockdown spread, so did the cost. Within weeks, billions were redirected to launch emergency geotechnical scans, contract underground warfare consultants, and build mobile command units near hot zones. Homeland Security scrambled to rebuild its entire response structure. Brand new units were created just to deal with underground threats. Even colleges got pulled into the mix. Universities were handed emergency funding to fast-track new AI systems that could power high-resolution ground-penetrating radar. Technology designed to spot threats buried deep in American dirt. In Washington, budgets were flipped upside down. Forecasts got shredded. The defense strategy? Completely rewritten. This was no longer just about defending a borderline. It was about redefining what U.S. territory even means. And back in Texas, people were done sitting around. In towns near the tunnel site, that uneasy feeling turned into action. Locals started forming neighborhood patrols, some even linking up with local cops to sweep rural land for signs of strange terrain or hidden shafts. Because now, nobody trusted what might be hiding under their homes, and nobody was waiting for another surprise to surface. Urban legends popped up almost overnight. Some locals swore they could hear strange mechanical humming under their houses late at night. Others claimed they were being watched, figures lurking in the woods, just out of sight. The government tried to keep a tight lid on everything to avoid mass panic, but the leaks came anyway. Grainy photos of tunnel interiors, strange equipment, and sealed-off vaults started making the rounds online. That's when the conspiracy theories exploded. People talking secret labs, hidden armies, and even alien tech. Fringe channels lit up. But underneath all the noise, real experts were raising red flags too. Underground warfare specialists, barely known before this, were now booked solid. And they all agreed on one thing. If one network like this existed, there were probably more. History backed them up. From ancient empires to modern cartels and war zones, tunnels have always been a go-to move. They bypass surface defenses and are nearly impossible to wipe out without major destruction. America had dealt with this tactic overseas, in Vietnam's Cu Chi tunnels, Afghanistan's mountain caves, even ISIS strongholds in Mosul. But never had a tunnel network like this been uncovered right here on U.S. soil. And definitely not at this scale. Pressure was mounting fast. People needed to know what this network was really for. Smuggling and sabotage were already big concerns. But then came something worse. Inside one secure server room deep in the tunnels, agents found fragmented digital files. And what they uncovered turned everyone's stomach. Notes and metadata suggested experiments involving chemical storage. Some chambers were built like labs, sealed, climate-controlled, and isolated from airflow. No active substances were found, but residue tests told a darker story. Traces of materials used in weaponized gas production were found. That one detail triggered a rapid response on a whole new level. NATO, the UN, and top-tier allied intel agencies were quietly brought in. not for optics, but for full threat analysis and emergency containment plans. This wasn't just an American problem anymore, it was global. A new phrase started making waves: subterranean insurgency. It described a terrifying type of threat, one that burrows instead of charges, one that wins with patience, not firepower. As psychological warfare experts got deeper into analyzing the tunnel system, they found something chilling. This place wasn't just built to hide, it was built to mess with your mind. Some chambers were designed to disorient intruders with circular layouts, tilted lighting, and fake directional signs. The goal? Confusion, panic, delay. It wasn't just architecture, it was psychological warfare by design. Meanwhile, logistics teams kept digging, literally, and what they found added another crazy layer. Hidden beneath false floors were crates of top-shelf gear, fiber optic cables, military-grade encryption tech, reinforced steel panels, and food rations that could last over a decade. Even wilder? Some of the gear came from legit US suppliers. That raised huge alarms. These weren't black market scraps. They were either stolen, quietly rerouted, or bought under fake names. Investigators jumped on the procurement trail, hunting shell companies and fake accounts that could have helped bankroll this whole thing. What they found next? A financial spiderweb, a mess of offshore bank accounts linked to front companies stretching from the Caribbean to Eastern Europe to Central Asia. It wasn't just tunnels. This was global-level laundering. Clean money funding, dirty operations, buried deep in US soil. Now into the second month of the shutdown, the national conversation started shifting. This wasn't just about immigration anymore, or even just border patrol. It was about non-traditional warfare hiding in plain sight. Think tanks began publishing reports on underground conflict architecture, and city planners across the country were forced to ask one terrifying question. If Texas could hide something like this, what's hiding under our cities? People started asking terrifying new questions. What's under New York's subway lines? Could something be hiding beneath LA's aqueducts? What about the endless sewer networks under Chicago? Or the forgotten dirt beneath I-10 stretching through desert nothingness? The fear of the unknown became a full-blown national obsession. In a rare moment of unity, Congress passed emergency legislation. Billions poured into a brand new defense priority: domestic subterranean security. Military bases began running underground warfare drills. City workers were trained to flag soil shifts, sinkholes, or weird vibrations under buildings. And just like that, a whole new career field was born: geostrategic defense experts. What lies beneath, once just a spooky phrase, turned into a rallying cry. Schools added underground safety drills, tech companies shifted focus, racing to build faster, more accurate tunnel detection tools. It was clear, this wasn't some one-time freak event. It was the start of a new era in modern warfare. Global reactions came fast. Some countries quietly applauded the US for catching the threat early. Others stayed silent, nervous it might spark questions about their own blind spots. Mexico, trying to keep up, launched its own investigation under mounting pressure. Because if the tunnels reached into Texas, how had their own authorities missed it? That pressure paid off. Within weeks, Mexico uncovered smaller tunnels under its northern region. Some were dead and abandoned, others still in use. Meanwhile, American engineers kept digging, figuratively and literally. And what they found only added to the dread. The tunnel structure? Insanely precise. Built to withstand bombing, reinforced in ways that made traditional demolition nearly useless. This wasn't just designed for stealth, it was built to survive war. And if this was only the beginning, what else was out there, quietly waiting below? These tunnels weren't just deep, they were engineered to resist destruction. Their curves, reinforced walls, and strategic depth made traditional methods like flooding or explosives nearly useless. Worse, using force could damage roads, pipelines, or buildings sitting right above them. So now, the issue wasn't just finding the tunnels, it was figuring out how to dismantle them without blowing everything else up. Specialized subterranean robotics units were rolled out, packed with LiDAR scanners and remote demolition tech. But even with all that firepower, progress was crawling. The full scale of the network was still unknown. As investigators kept digging, focus shifted to a darker question. How did this go unnoticed for so long? That's when counterintelligence analysts got involved, not just to confirm foreign involvement, but to ask something more unsettling. Was someone on the inside helping to keep this hidden? Their early reports, kept quiet from the public, pointed to a nasty reality. Broken systems. Agencies weren't talking to each other. Data was scattered. Jurisdictions overlapped with no clear chain of command. That confusion? It created the perfect blind spot for long-term concealment. Even worse, some contractors and officials tied to border projects had signed off on reports showing strange terrain shifts. Looking back now, those natural anomalies were actually early signs of tunneling, and nobody flagged them. As excavation teams continued working under heavy protection, they noticed weird environmental clues around key tunnel branches. One of the most shocking? Patches of artificially cooled soil right above the major paths underground. This wasn't nature. Experts believe those cold spots were engineered, on purpose, to fool thermal imaging from aerial drones. That kind of trickery takes serious knowledge of surveillance tech and advanced soil science. Whoever did this didn't just dig deep, they outsmarted the system at every level. This confirmed what many had feared. This wasn't some backwoods tunnel job. It was a highly strategic operation built by people who understood exactly how to dodge US surveillance. And when analysts zoomed in on the timing of its growth, things got even wilder. Satellite data from the last decade showed tunnel expansions often lined up with moments of national distraction. Natural disasters, political scandals, massive protests. While the country was glued to headlines or dealing with chaos, construction crews below were quietly expanding. No stealth tech needed, just good timing and the fact that when people are overwhelmed, they stop paying attention. But as more data came in, a whole new danger popped up. Some tunnels ran dangerously close to the Ogallala Aquifer system, one of the most vital underground water sources in the US. That aquifer supplies drinking water and irrigation to millions across the Central Plains. One wrong move, whether on purpose or by accident, could contaminate entire regions. It wouldn't just be a border crisis anymore. It would be an environmental disaster on a national scale. Geologists raised the alarm. Even minor interference in those zones could destabilize the water table or sneak in harmful chemicals, stuff that might not even show up until it's way too late. That's when this thing went from scary to catastrophic. Emergency protocols were instantly activated in nearby counties. Environmental sensors were put on high alert. And now it wasn't just Homeland Security involved. The EPA, FEMA, and the Department of the Interior were all pulled into the fight. This Texas tunnel crisis had officially become one of the most complex federal responses in recent U.S. history. Part national security threat, part environmental time bomb, and still growing. While federal agencies scrambled to contain the fallout, private sector contractors jumped in too, specifically experts in ecological surveillance. They were brought in to test soil and water samples across a massive 300-mile zone. And what they found? Exposed a whole new weakness. America's infrastructure was completely unprepared for threats coming from below, especially ones that could sabotage the environment long-term. At the same time, sociologists and criminologists started digging into the human side of the story. Who would agree to live underground for years? What kind of mindset, motivation, or manipulation drives someone into that kind of life? Interviews with defectors from similar global underground networks revealed a mix of chilling incentives. Some were lured in by cult-like beliefs, others pushed by financial desperation or blackmail. Some were promised freedom through a bigger cause, even if it meant total isolation. Inside the tunnels, the dormitory zones told their own story. Everything was cold, minimal, but disciplined. Bunk beds lined up perfectly, gear arranged with military precision, It hinted at a clear hierarchy. Everyone had a role, and rules were enforced without question. But not everything was cold and calculated. Some parts of the network showed real signs of human collapse. Tunnels left unfinished. Equipment scattered like someone ran in a panic. Messages scratched into the walls, written in urgency. In one sealed chamber, hidden behind a heavy blast door, investigators found stockpiles of emergency gear, oxygen tanks, old food rations, long past their expiration dates. That space looked like a last resort bunker, a place to hide if escape wasn't possible anymore. It was a chilling portrait of the planners, people smart enough to build something huge, but scared enough to plan for their own burial beneath it. And while the government tried to keep media in check with blackout zones and restricted access, pressure from journalists kept growing. The public wanted the truth, and the media was done playing quiet. Documentarians, rogue journalists, and even ex-intelligence agents started digging into the mystery themselves. The people wanted answers, not just about what was found, but why it was ignored for so long. Protests broke out across major cities, not aimed at the border, but at the silence, at the systems that let this happen right under everyone's feet. One question kept echoing through every headline, every news special, every late-night show. How did this stay hidden for so long? If you're just as shocked, drop a comment, share this video, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive investigations.